resolve multiple match with invalid or cancelled identifier. So this story relates to import profiles, and we have the following scenario. I'm trying to import into Alma a record that has, in the 035 identifier field, subfield A has a valid identifier, and subfield Z has an invalid or old identifier. This sometimes happens if the identifier changes, or changes were made to the record, and you have a new identifier and the previous one is no longer valid. So you might have a 035 field with two subfields, A and Z. This can potentially lead to a multiple match in Alma in the case where my Alma repository has in it two records, one with the 035 field with the value of the valid ID and one with the old or invalid ID. But when Alma runs the import profile, it will still find both of these matches because it compares not only subfield A, it also compares subfield Z. And up until now, until the February release, you would get a multiple match and you'd have to resolve that manually. Now in the February release, we have the option to automatically resolve matches. And what happens is the record with the invalid ID is disregarded, and the imported record is merged with or overlaid, depending on your configuration, with the record that has the valid ID. Let's take a look in Alma at an example of such a multiple match and how Alma can automatically resolve it. So once again, Alma will ignore the record with the invalid ID and only merge it with the record with the valid ID. And the future goal, of course, is for Alma to have the ability, even if you had 50 different records here, ultimately we want them all to be merged into one record and Alma to get rid of the old duplicated records with an invalid ID. Right now in our release, the pertinent feature is that the multiple match is solved automatically and the record is merged to the one with the preferred ID. Okay, I have here two records. One has the ID 00100 and the other the ID 00200. They have different IDs. One is a tail of a valid city. This is going to be our valid ID. And one is a tail of an invalid city. So both of these have the 035 field subfield A. They each have a different ID. But the file that I want to import, in its 035 field, we have two subfields, subfield A with the valid ID 00100 and subfield Z with the invalid one 00200. We want to tell Alma, look, this old ID, subfield Z is the invalid one, and we would like this record to be merged or overlaid with the one with the valid ID. Right? We want it to be merged with a tail of a valid city. And just to make sure that the merge works, I made a slight change in the title, and subfield B is going to say new from import. So if Alma correctly merges the record, then we'll see the title of valid city changing. Okay, so this is our setup. Once again, we have two records in Alma that both of these will potentially match with the imported record, resulting in a multiple match. And the multiple match will be solved automatically depending on how we configure the import profile. So now we're going to create an import profile and make sure to configure the option of resolving automatically a multiple match with an invalid identifier. Alma, we're going to create the import profile now. Resource configuration menu, import profiles, and we'll add a new profile of type repository. We're going to call this import valid. Next. Okay. Now, it's important that we select proper match method. This feature relates to the 035 field. So we're going to go by the 035 match method. If you match it with the 001 field, then our scenario will not occur. So we have to make sure. Now, it's also relevant to fuzzy match or to 035 match, assuming that these methods reach a scenario whereby they're comparing the 035 fields. But to make sure that I'm comparing 035 fields, I'm selecting my match method to be by 035. Upon match, I'll select to overlay. Now is the new and important part, and what to do in the case of a multiple match. Automatic multi-matches handling, we want to disregard invalid or canceled system control number identifiers. Okay? Next. Next. Okay, no inventory, and we'll save. Okay, so we have this new import profile, import valid. Let's run the import on our file. If everything works well, Alma will identify a multiple match and will overlay the record with the valid one and not with the invalid one. Okay, actions, run import. Our file is valid import. That's the file I just showed you before with the 035 field that has both subfield A and subfield Z. Add. Submit. Okay, the job is now running. We'll give it a refresh. Job is completed successfully. Let's look at the report. Total records processed 1, total records imported 1. That's good. Now, matches. Multi-matches found 1. So Alma did recognize a multiple match, but you notice that we were not notified for manual handling, right? Because multi-matches resolved automatically as 1. So Alma recognized the multiple match, but resolved it automatically. We can see that our record was imported. So it looks like everything is fine. Let's just take a look at our record to see the imported record. And we see that tail of a valid city, new from import. The record has indeed been overlaid. Let's just see what happened to the old record. A tail of an invalid city, right? This was our record with the canceled or with the invalid identifier. That one remains untouched. Okay, all we did was just select to overlay our record with the valid one. You can see that Alma resolved the match automatically. This was automatic resolution of a multiple match with an invalid or canceled identifier.